Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to Feel Good with Me. I'm your host, Idan, and today we have a really special guest, and those guests means the most to me because they are part of the family. They have fibromyalgia or ME or fibromyalgia and ME and all the sensitivities and chemicals issues and like many of us have. So I'll let Ray speak. And Ray, so if you can introduce yourself and then if you can tell us when your symptoms first started, what do you think were the triggers, what are your actual symptoms, anything that helped you so far, and I will interrupt you as we go along because I'll get excited because like many of us will feel, wow, there's another person that feels very similar to us and we're not alone. So Ray,
Yeah,
welcome to the
there's
show.
another person suffering. That's so exciting. Oh, finally, another person suffering.
Unfortunately, but exactly.
Well, hello. I just go by Ray. It's kind of like Sting or Madonna, and introduce myself. I guess I could say that I'm a licensed professional counselor, a therapist. I'm semi-retired at the moment, so I'm not doing sessions anymore. Occasionally do consultations and that sort of thing, but I had a private practice for about 15 years in the United States. And towards the end of that, I did a lot of work with people who were suffering from PTSD, who had a lot of significant trauma in their lives, and it was very heavy work. And towards the end of my career, I started to develop some very strange physical and psychological symptoms. And then also a lot of events happened in the background that were not related to the counseling that, obviously we had a global pandemic. I don't know if you remember that. If you recall, there was this weird, global pandemic thing going on for a while. No big deal. No, not a lot of stress or anything like that. And then I think when things really started to go crazy for me was when the war in Ukraine started. And that is because I have two children. I have two children that are grown in their 20s, and they live in Poland, which is right next door to the Ukraine. And so at the beginning of that war, there was a lot of unknowns, and Poland was being threatened, and nuclear power plants within, downwind from my children were being threatened. And I had an extreme bout of anxiety that started at that time, and an extreme bout of insomnia. And then I started to have very strange health symptoms that I have, many of which I have never experienced before. They were very strange. Others were ones that I have experienced before, but they were just sort of exacerbated. And then I started to get multiple illnesses, a lot of I would say immune deficiency type of thing. Like I had, what's it called when you have the chickenpox virus, and then it's latent in your body, and then later in life it's triggered. You get terrible. My brain is not thinking of the word for the.
It's part of having fibro is the brain fog, we forget things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It
That's another symptom that I
brain
started
fog.
experiencing really bad ADHD, where I couldn't, I'd set down a water cup and, or I'd forget for hours to even drink water, and then, immediately forget where things were, that sort of thing. Hard to focus. Anyway, so yeah, a lot of strange immune related issues. I started going to doctors to try to figure out what in the hell is happening to me. Why am I getting all of these weird illnesses? I started having really bad muscle spasms, especially here in my neck, where like the muscles would start to tighten up and I could not relax them. It was like that was the default mode. I could focus to relax the muscles intentionally, but then as soon as I changed my focus to something else, the tension returned and it was there constantly. Very strange skin sensations. I started getting like waves and waves of goosebumps for no reason, like literally like electrical currents running through my body constantly.
Any pimples or skin rashes?
Yeah, I would get a lot of redness around like a lot of it had to do with my neck and this area around my face. but I also got strange red rash looking appearances on different parts of my body that would randomly appear for no reason, sometimes immediately, and then like they would appear in real time. I would see it appear, and then it would last half an hour or an hour and then suddenly be gone. Tingling sensations down my arms and into my hands and fingers, numbness, pains that I have always had. Like I've always had a lot of back issues, but really like the volume turned up on those pain sensors. Like I was constantly, more aware of them. I started becoming very sensitive to light, sensitive to sound. Public places would be very difficult for me to be in because it would be such a sensory overload, and so it would cause a lot of anxiety and physical discomfort. Started like smells were into almost like everything, all the sensory inputs just getting in my body's just got the volume turned way up on it. But the absolute worst was the insomnia. It was hellish, total insomnia. I could not sleep no matter how exhausted I was. I would lie there in this like torturous state and just really had spent many nights wanting to die. Just like this is so miserable. If this is what life is, I don't want to live it anymore. It was horrible. And so that was sort of how things started. But I'll
I
slow
see.
down, let you interject something if you want.
And it's very similar, slightly different symptom, but all in all, a lot of overlap with my symptoms and many people which I speak with. Also, the insomnia. I forget the first few years, the insomnia was crazy. If I would sleep 1 to 3 hours a night, that was a fantastic night. And who can live and go by life sleeping 1 to 3 hours a night? It's impossible. You can't
Yeah,
function like that.
yeah, you start to go crazy, literally crazy, like hallucinations or, paranoia or, my depression would felt like it was off the charts, or my anxiety would be unmanageable because you can't sleep. So you literally feel like you're going crazy.
And how did you feel? Because a lot of us, I think we feel when we change like that because you look very fit and on the outside, but we become so weak. How do you feel people that were close to you when you tell them, I can't do like the same for me. I couldn't do my job anymore. I couldn't do any exercise
Yeah,
anymore. How
yeah.
did you feel people understood or support you? And if anyone hearing at the end, if you can tell what they could have done better or what advice for those who listening, who caring for someone or know someone with our condition.
Yeah, that's a really good question because you're experiencing all of these strange things, but a lot of them are not visible on the outside. It's not obvious to anyone around you.
Our legs and hands are still intact to the body.
Yeah,
That's what
right.
people will tell me.
Yeah, like you're functioning fine. You're moving. You're functioning fine. What's wrong? Just get back to work. Or if my hands are tingling, look, they're moving. They're working just fine. What's the problem? But like I've constantly got these feelings of numbness or tingling or pain or something shooting down my arms, and that's the sort of thing that it's so irritating. After a period of time, you also feel like you're going crazy. Like I can't stand this anymore. I want this to stop. So then it would impact my mood. I got, very irritable and angry very easily and that sort of thing. So yeah, absolutely, it starts to have an impact on relationships and the people around you. And it got to the point where I couldn't work because going into a session and talking about something very stressful, talking about someone's trauma, or just trying to be emotionally present for someone takes a lot of focus. And so by the end of the session, my whole body would be buzzing like with electricity, and it became very hard to focus and very hard to provide the sort of, presence of mind and feedback and validation that are so important in a counseling setting. So it was getting to the point where I'm like, I don't think I can keep doing therapy, which, this is my livelihood. So what do I, that's a very serious thing to start. So I started slowly realizing, like, I don't think I can continue working, which is very scary. Back to your question about relationships. So I think I had a partner who at first was very supportive and curious. It wasn't ever like like he flat out didn't ever say I don't believe you or what's going on. But he was trying to be supportive, and he would be like, well, let's get this checked out and go to the doctor. And so he was trying to like help in a sort of practical way. Let's try to solve this problem, right? There's all these problems that keep coming up. Let's try to solve these problems. And so I was like grateful for the help because like, yeah, what's going on with me, right? So over the first period of about 2 to 3 years, I must have gone to 15 maybe different medical professionals. We're talking like at first I thought maybe this is something allergy wise. I'm having an allergic reaction. So I went to an allergist. I got stabbed with like 250 needles or something in my back, trying to see what I'm reacted to. I went to, and results were inclusive. It's not an allergic reaction. I tried histamines, I went to a dermatologist. Is this a skin issue? And they gave me high levels of antihistamines for a long period of time. Nothing. I went to multiple different sleep specialists. I had, of course, my family doctor who was very great and very patient, and she was trying also to solve all these problems and let's try this medication, let's try that medication. I went to massage therapists, acupuncturists, went to orthopedists, and I finally ended up in a neurologist's office, like, can you scan my brain? What is happening to my body? And she ran multiple tests, multiple blood tests, multiple MRIs, multiple x-rays, multiple tests for autoimmune conditions. Everything checked out. There's nothing we can see on paper that's wrong with you. But to the credit of all of these physicians, I never really experienced anything like, shaming. This is all in your head. They were all very curious and very helpful, or tried to be very helpful. But every single one of them at the end of the day was stumped. I eventually got to this answer. I just don't know what's wrong with you. Have you tried going to this specialist? Right? And it wasn't until about 2.5 or so years into this crazy journey that the neurologist finally said, have you been to see a rheumatologist? And I don't think I even knew what rheumatologists specialized in at the time, maybe joints or something. So I got in to see a rheumatologist, and that was the first person who looked at me and said, have you ever heard of fibromyalgia? And I was like, yeah, I've heard of the word, something like a pain condition. And I think I had known that I think I had a client who had fibromyalgia earlier on, and I knew that it had something to do with experiencing a lot of pain and sort of poorly understood. And so the rheumatologist started to explain, I started to research this, and he said at one point, he said, it isn't fully understood yet, but the best way to describe it is though it's like there's parts of whatever part of your brain registers all of these things that most people relegate to the background, right? We're always experiencing little discomforts, little pains, little sensations in our bodies. And I think the average person, there's a part of your brain that's experiencing that sensory input, but they're sort of being relegated to the background as like background noise, right? And he said with fibromyalgia, for some reason, the volume is turned up on all of those things. And when he said it that way, I was like, yes, that's exactly that. I wouldn't have been able to put that into those words myself, but once he said that, it clicked, and I was like, yes, that is exactly what's happening to me.
Wow. And usually I guess in my case it was like that, but in your case it's reverse. So me, I was in my 20s and I was going to my parents to tell them something terribly happened to me. My energy, my concentration, my aches, everything is. But for you, it was the other way. You had to inform your children that daddy is going through something. How is that? And in your experience, were they okay with it? Were they understanding? Because people look at you, you look very, very fit, and then you tell them, well, daddy is not 100%.
You should keep saying
Um,
that. That's a lot.
and,
Yeah. Don't hesitate to keep telling me how fit I look.
no, you look amazing. And for those who wonder, I do know Ray in person. He cuts my hair. So and I'm not gonna let him get away with it. So he cuts his hairs as well. And then the other thing I think that people might not be aware, that you saying you're struggling with concentrating and reading or working, but your background was studying a very big book all your life, focusing on reading and learning and extracting things, and really like a philosophical practice for most of your adults, I think. And also to become a therapist, you have to read and research ton lots. So I think it's important to explain that when you say you can't concentrate, this is not someone that has maybe ADHD before and didn't really read things before. You're someone that all your life was studying and teaching and researching, and your concentration was your gift, your power, and suddenly going from a gifted concentration person to a person who really struggles to focus. Would you say that's correct?
Well, I definitely would say that I definitely say that would say that ADHD has always been present, and it's not always been easy for me to focus, I could when I needed to, and I learned a lot of, I think over time I learned a lot of coping skills around that so that I could, focus for the times that I needed to. But what I would say is that it's like the ADHD got kicked into high gear, like worse than I've ever experienced, right? So now the regular coping skills are not working anymore. And then back to your question about my kids and my relationship, I think I finished answering your question about the relationship, by the way. So my kids were concerned but supportive, and also they started to like ask questions and worry about their own, like, is this genetic, because are predisposed and that sort of thing, which as far as I know, there is a bit of a genetic component and I think that my children have some sensory issues or ADHD going on, and things like that. So I hope that full-blown fibromyalgia isn't in their future, but maybe there is, a higher chance for them. And so they were very concerned. My partner was concerned, and I would say it was difficult for him to be patient sometimes because, again, you can't see what's going on the inside. And so you're like, let's go to the restaurant, and why are you complaining so much that that you're miserable sitting here? My back's, I'm trying to tell him, like, my back's hurting because the chair is uncomfortable. The noise is so loud, I can't. It's like daggers in my brain. I can't stand like the noise. The lights are too bright. I could list all of these sensory things. That's just me. I'm just trying to sit here and enjoy a meal, and so is he. And inside, I'm like, get me out of here. And it starts to, I can sort of suppress it for a while, but then it sort of starts to get to this like panic mode where I'm like, I have to leave. I have to get out of here. So I know that was very frustrating for him to be patient with those sort of things. And for those that are going through this and have, especially like for the significant others of those going through this, I would say be careful not to dismiss what your partner is saying. Try to believe them when they say it's real, even though you can't really see that it's happening. Your partner does not want to be suffering and feeling this. It's not like they're, making this up for attention or something like that, right? It's real. They don't want to be miserable all the time. And try to put yourself in their shoes of like what that would do to you psychologically if you felt miserable all the time, and try to be patient with that. And I was appreciative of my partner trying to help me solve problems because it was like this huge puzzle that just kept getting more and more complex and more complex. And I needed support trying to put all of those pieces together to figure out what to do. And because of that support and some good medical professionals and research that I did on my own, I started to figure out things that would help. But that involved like a journey that not only led me to another continent, another part of the world, but also like profound life changes, daily habit changes. I've had to find coping skills, and I had to like really examine my day-to-day habits and how I live, and it's been a journey. It's
And
Still, that is still happening.
I think what you mentioned, having a supportive partner, we have such a puzzle to solve, and with brain fog, we just can't put the pieces together. So if you have someone
Right.
without brain fog next to us, that's really helpful.
Right, exactly. Yes. I'm very grateful for having a partner that is very solution focused and organized and able to help me like, okay, we got to plan this thing, we've got to schedule this thing, we haven't tried this thing, here, let's research that thing, right? That was me.
Now, anything in particular you can say that things you tried that really didn't help and you thought they would and they were really done the opposite, and any things that you can think of that really did help. So for me, for example, the gluten-free, sugar-free really help things like that. But whatever thing you feel you have different, me, I probably have IBS from before this condition anyway, so that was only exhaust. As you said, it does turn the volume up to everything.
Yeah, it's like a lot of the things systematically that have been going on with your body maybe forever are just amplified. Yeah, totally. The first thing that came to mind when you said things that didn't work, I would say most medications that I tried did not work. And a lot of them made things worse, either because of the side effects or because of the impact on your body going off of the medication, like ramping up trying to get on this medication, hoping that it's going to work, realizing it either feel worse or I feel no different, and then trying to come off of these different medications can often have for me, because everything's amplified, especially you're going through withdrawal symptoms that are just amplified and make things more miserable. So yeah, very few of the medication interventions that were tried, and I cannot even begin to list the amount of different medications that I have tried over and over and over again. Most of them have not helped at all. Some of them have helped maybe, like there's a few that I still take that I'm like, I keep taking this because maybe it makes a difference, but none of them help so dramatically that I'm like, oh yes, this is my answer. Oh, finally I got the right medication for this. No. It's like some of them, maybe they help a little. So the things that have helped, I would say number one thing that I discovered, the number one thing, okay, how do I put this? There was a book that I read, I think it was called Connections or something like that. And it was actually about depression and anxiety, and how a lot of depression and anxiety stems from the lack of connection that we have. And he lists a bunch of different types of connection, like connection to nature, to the self, connection to other human beings, because of how distant we all live, from one another now behind these screens, connection to a sense of purpose. So things like that. And it sort of started me thinking, what am I feeling disconnected from? And I noticed early on that the number one thing that would help relieve my symptoms was to go out in nature. If I could just take a 5-minute break and walk outside and look at some trees and feel the wind on my skin, or look at the clouds, or hear some birds chirping, it would immediately alleviate a lot of my symptoms. I immediately felt better. And so I started realizing that I need to shift my life in a way that I spend a lot more time outdoors and connected to nature. And I started taking walks, and I got a bicycle, and I started riding my bicycle outdoors. Because before that I would work out a lot indoors though, like in a gym. I got to the point where I could not go to a gym because the noise, the smells, the scent, the lights, I could not do it. But I knew I needed to exercise because I would feel better when I was exercising. And so I shifted a lot of my exercise activities outdoors so that I was both connecting to nature and connecting to my physical body in a healthy way. So that was probably the number one thing that I found that would alleviate symptoms. And then the number two thing I would say is music. I started to realize that another time when I felt better is when I'm listening to music that I love, singing along with it, even dancing along with it. I started realizing, like, I don't I don't feel all of these horrible symptoms when I'm enjoying music. There's something about music and the way it affects me emotionally and physically that has been an absolute lifesaver. And then I think the other thing that I would say is up there, probably in the number 3 slot of things that have helped me is, and this is still an ongoing battle, but sleep. So I went to a psychiatrist who specializes in CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And I spent many months, many miserable months, trying to get better, trying to understand the underlying issue with sleep and get better at sleeping. It's so strange. It's such a natural thing that you think like should be a no-brainer. Everybody needs, all living organisms need sleep. It's the most natural thing in the world. What is going on? It's like when I put my head on my pillow, I'd be exhausted, completely exhausted to the core. I put my head on my pillow, and that switch that turns your brain from conscious to unconscious. I remember saying this out loud one day. I was like, that switch is broken on me. It will not switch to the off position anymore. No matter what, I can't make it turn off. And so there was a lot of stuff around sleep hygiene that I worked on, but the biggest thing for me, because I also have like a secondary sleep disorder. I have 2 big old sleep disorders that just go hand in hand. And one of the other sleep disorder that I have is called sleep-wake phase disorder or something like that. It's a long name like that. And basically the melatonin genetically in everyone in my family pretty much has this, my brain releases melatonin much later in the night. So, I mean, we're talking like 2-3 o'clock in the morning is when I start to feel tired, and not maybe 10 or 11 p.m. like the average person. And so that has been a difficult thing to overcome my whole life, but especially with about this horrible insomnia, like it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And so what I learned was that the most important piece of that is consistency. That's the one thing that she taught me that I'll never forget. And when I finally, because I'm not good at being consistent in anything, ADHD and all that. I can be all over the place. But so it's hard for me sometimes to create a new habit and like stick to it, every day. But when I started to finally like go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time on a consistent basis, I started to be able to sleep a little better. My sleep quality improved. And that is something that I've been able to continue. And I notice anytime I deviate from that, or I have to get up too early for some thing scheduled that I have going on, or if something wakes me up for some reason or whatever, and I get off of that regularity, or sometimes, I'm human and I just want to get that last episode of whatever that show is and I go to bed too late or something, I can immediately tell. It can knock me off for days. And the symptoms will return. The insomnia returns with a vengeance, and it's just really, really been difficult. So it's like this insomnia thing is just teetering on the edge of all the time, and could just completely fall right off the cliff back into nightmare land if I'm not very careful.
Thank you for sharing about sleep. And yeah, it's so important and so healing for us, as you said. And it's really great that you found CBT to work, and nature to do so good to you, and the exercises outdoor. I want to leave with a couple of things. One is, are you hopeful? Do you think we're gonna get better? Or do you think we just are in this new reality, new us? This is our capacity, and it may improve a little bit, it may go down a little bit. How are you feeling about the condition now? And then in general, what message can you tell others who are going through this, or family members who are just discovering their loved one is going through this, and also for us who's suffering with it? So 2 big questions, if you can think about how you see that. Are you hopeful? Do you believe you're going to become back to the Ray that you were, full of energy and strength and vitality, and living an amazing life, or do you think this is just we have to accept what it is and just hope for a little bit improvements here and there and just learn to manage the dips? Because I'm sure most people listening, there are days or weeks when we're a little bit better, and there are days or months that we are really a mess, and it's so difficult to get out of this ditch. And sometimes I can't even work it out. I'm really not good for 3 months, and then suddenly I'm getting better again. And I'm trying to keep a track on my diet, on my sleep, on my relationship, on my communication. On I had a therapist, and I can't figure it out. So it's very
Yeah.
difficult to be hopeful that we will be back to who we were, because I feel a fraction of the person I was, and I'm sure you feel as well like that. So I want to know how you
Yeah,
think
in many
about
ways.
it.
Yeah, I kind of do feel like, I mean, I definitely feel like a different person. But you said, will I get back to the person that I was? Do any of us ever get back to the person that we were? I mean, we're always changing. We're always, so no, I don't think I'll ever get back to the person that I was. In some ways, that's a good thing, though. In some ways, I don't want to go back to being the person that I was, right? In some ways, I'm deeply grateful that this has led me in a journey of self-discovery, and I've made some profound life changes that have been mostly positive. Like, it has led me on a journey of discovery and met people and had experiences that I wouldn't have met or wouldn't have had without this condition. I'm not very hopeful that it will just magically go away someday. I think it's sort of like a pervasive chronic thing. But at the same time, I think that it's manageable. So I have hope about that. Something that came to my mind when you were asking me that question was something that I probably should have mentioned, I was listing the things that have helped. Stress. I need to talk about stress. I learned very early on that stress is a huge driver in this. In other words, the more stressed I felt, the more my body would react to those symptoms and like exacerbate those symptoms. So I learned early on that a huge part of this is managing stress. And that's true for everybody in all walks of life. Everybody, we live in a very stressful reality. And I think a lot of our health and wellness comes from learning how to manage that stress in healthy ways. So that's true for everybody, but very, very specifically, like, I'll give you an example. I used to love watching really intense shows, drama or mystery, or something where your heart's racing the whole time is exciting, or scary. I can tell immediately if I see, even just watching a television show where the stakes are low, stakes are zero. I'm sitting safely on a couch, right, watching this show. But if it is in any way ramping up my nervous system, I feel it in my whole body. And there are shows that I literally just cannot watch anymore. And I have to seek out entertainment that is calming, uplifting. I have to be very careful about the things that trigger my mood, because anything that stresses my system, even a TV show, can set off those symptoms. So it's led me to having a much more peaceful life and cutting out a lot of the things from my life that are stressful and that weren't doing me any good anyway. And some of those things have been really hard decisions. I mean, we're talking whole relationships had to go with certain people in my life that were so triggering to me that I just had to let them go. And there's a lot of grief surrounding that, but like, I needed to do it to be healthy, to be okay. Does that make sense?
It totally does. So I think that what we can leave the people listening is that we learn to take better care of ourselves.
Yeah.
We are
Yes.
forced to.
Yeah, it's like you absolutely have to, or
Yeah.
you can't function.
And learning to take better care of ourselves, I think, would lead in the long term for a healthier, longer, better quality of life. Not just
Yes.
with the condition, but also for the lifespan that we have. Because if we learn to
Yes.
reduce stress, we learn to reduce the consumption of noise from media, from environment that is toxic to us, it's better. And also for probably the food and toxins we're exposed to, which are triggering
Yes.
us, and exposing ourselves to nature. All of the things which I think most longevity people will say, these are the basics, basically. So we are
Yeah.
forced to learn them. So that's I
Yes,
see
you
that.
you
Please.
have to be very careful about what you are consuming and what you're exposing yourself to, and that's in all walks of life. Social media, gone. Does not exist in my life. Gone. News, most of the news, I either need to have very small chunks, just, a little bit like I know, okay, so I know what's going on, and then turn it off, or completely, there are times when I have to just completely. I used to feel like this sort of responsibility to, as an intelligent, good human being, I need to know what's going on in the world, but not at the expense of my health. Not anymore. Not doing it. Things that stress me out, gone. They've got to be gone, or else I can't function. I got to care about me and love me enough to keep those walls up around the certain things that I just cannot experience anymore.
And I would leave the audience with something that I felt really alone when I discovered my symptoms, and I thought I was the only one. When I met Ray, we straight away hugged because there's another family member, because we don't feel so alone. So the message here, whoever you are not alone. There's others like us who are struggling and going through this, and I think that's an important message, right?
That's one of the most important messages because we're all looking for connection. We all need to know that we're not alone and we have support, right? And same thing the longest time. We went through this like feeling like nobody understands, nobody gets it. There's not really anyone I can talk to about this because they don't, and they might even listen patiently, but they're not really grasping what's going on. So to have someone, and hopefully more than one, connect yourself. That's a huge piece of advice I would give, is to connect yourself with a network of people that love you, that support you, that listen to you, and at least some of them need to know what you're going through, so that you have that one friend that you can be like, oh my god, you tell that thing to, and they're like, yeah, you don't even need words to get it, right? They just know. That is so important. So I think that's an important part of what you're doing here, is just trying to put the word out there and talk about it more. Yeah,
Thank you so much, Ray, for being with us.
absolutely. Thank you.
And for those who enjoyed listening, please give us a like, share it with someone that you think may be benefit for them to hear this. And I will see you at the next episode, and I'm sure we will bring Ray again.
Anytime. You're great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ray.
You're welcome.
Um,